you guys know.
Thank
It's
you.
sad, but he
Anything
has a
from your end
training story.
quickly, Alfonso, on that?
I saw it myself, and it's sad, it's devastating. My concern is really with the young woman, whoever that is, that was his victim. My understanding is that Mr. Conan pled guilty, so there was no trial. So obviously he admitted to wrongdoing, and it's sad. And I think we should discuss that at some point on a larger context in terms of what happens in our communities, in our societies. Families usually just keep hush hush and keep these things on a cover, but they have serious impact on the children involved, even if on the females, on the people involved generally, on the families as well. So I think at some point I hope our community, and even media institutions will begin to talk about these issues openly as a way of creating awareness, and protecting our young people and women in general.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you for
But I
breaking it
have
down.
one trending
Oh,
news
okay.
just for 5 seconds. So this is a Liberian born bishop, of the Episcopal Church, who was recently elected, bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of, I believe, Arkansas, in Little Rock. His name is the Reverend Canon John T.W. Hammer. He was born in Liberia, so he's of Liberian descent, and I think Liberians should be proud that this man came here, worked his way through the process, and was elected bishop of an Episcopal diocese of the United States of America. And we just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I want to say congratulations to the bishop. But quickly, gentlemen, you saw the flyer. You know what the conversation is about today. And of course, who could better join us here? Our own veteran brother. Uh, someone who I believe all of us shared the opportunity in media practices with. Mr. Emmanuel Abalo, former acting president of the Press Union of Liberia, a former uh, member of the ELCM, the Catholic Media Institution, then, of course, the Liberia Broadcasting System, and I don't know where else, but you will probably tell us a little bit more. But you've been away so long, and sometimes when we stay away so long, we tend to be forgotten about. So you come here now and tell the people who is Mr. Abalo as we delve into the conversation. Welcome.
Thank you, Volcano. It's good to see you. It's been quite a while, Moses, and everybody on the show here, Mr. Yeno. It's good to see you all, and thank you for the invitation to appear on the show.
Issues
You
room.
all have been doing tremendously. You've been doing tremendously well, keeping the agenda, keeping the issues in the forefront for our people, for Liberians to follow, and also for those in the diaspora to actually, one, see how journalism is done, and secondly, to transfer information to people who may be watching. So, yeah, for the most part, I've been doing some writing. I've written 5 books. In the meantime, one of them is a children's book. Those books have been published. We've looked at the evolution of the Liberian military. One of those books. We also looked at the conflagration of 1980 and how the coup rendered the country, um, the role that the United States played during that time. The latest book is on the media in sub Saharan Africa, some of the pitfalls and opportunities of the media, the challenges of new media. That's the latest book. So I've been doing a lot of writing, and so that's what has been keeping me busy. So I come from a background of journalism from the University of Liberia, where I graduated from the Mass Communications Department, which was set up by the late Professor T. Nelson Williams under the tutorship of Lamini Warite. Um, and Joe Mulba and the rest of them. And I started my journalism journey with the then Catholic owned ELCM Community Radio, rose from news reporter to news editor, and we worked there until the station was extrajudicially closed down in June of 1979 by the government. And then we all went our separate ways. I taught for a bit at the AME Zion. It was then called the AME Zion Community College, which later became the AME Zion University, until the breakout of the war in 1990. And with the coming of the peacekeeping force in Monrovia, we were asked to man the mobile radio station to kind of counter the propaganda that was coming from the Taylor territory, and to kind of maintain some stability when it came to the media. We also helped to reunite the media, which was split as a result of some journalists who were caught behind rebel lines and those in Monrovia. So we did some of that work. We also helped to give the Press Union of Liberia an international profile, working with the National Endowment for Democracy and other institutions in the U.S. And so that kind of helped a whole lot. And so we're proud of the work we did. And so we want to allow members of the Press Union now in Liberia to kind of look at what the Press Union has been, and nationally and internationally, and kind of learn from that. It's heartbreaking to see the division in the Press Union, which I've been following. And my appeal to members of the Press Union is to set aside their egos and the differences that they have and reunite, because we are the example of a democratic institution in Liberia. We're supposed to hold the government, accountable, and powerful people accountable. But we also have to keep our house in order to do that. So my appeal, a passionate appeal to the press union, the media in Liberia, is to come together and to resolve whatever leadership issues they have, so that we can get on with the work of being the watchdogs and being the account holder for powerful individuals and individuals in Liberia. So it's good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Abalo is at your disposal. So you know what we're talking about. We're talking about the role of the media, on how they're going to report during these elections. And you've seen a lot coming up, gentlemen. Whether one-sided, whether for, whether against, whatever it is, let's have the conversation.
Well, I would like to begin from the statement Mr. Abalo made. Let's begin by taking a critical look at ourselves first, because when we do that, then people will say, "Yes, I think now we can believe whatever they say." And this is where I agree with Mr. Abalo on the Press Union of Liberia is considered an integrity institution. To see the level of divisiveness in the PUL, people who don't know the history, I think last year a leadership election was held. Mr. Charles Coffey, who tenure expired, was accused of taking side. And there are other people who believe that the process was poorly handled. As a result, the leadership that evolved out of there, that brought a complete split in the union. Today, you have two factions. You have the leadership that was elected in Bangabong County, one side, and you have the other individuals who say, well, they do not recognize the leadership. Several groups, the Council of Churches and other human rights groups, are all made efforts to resolve this. the problem remains unsolved. It is my understanding that few months ago, Mr. Coffey, who many pointed accusing finger at, himself resigned, even though his tenure expired and election was held, but he still on because he said they needed to have somebody in charge of the organization. But then a few months ago, he also resigned. And what did he do? The very individual who many consider to have been elected under dubious circumstances is the individual that he turned the leadership over to. Now, this man is acting. It's like Mr. Abalo and Moses Sandy are fighting, and you turn power over to Mr. Abalo, and you want Moses Sandy to sit and talk to Mr. Abalo. Where are they going to go? And that is very shameful. This is embarrassing because at this critical time in Liberia, where the media is looked up to, for setting their agenda, for reporting objectively, when the umbrella organization has integrity problem, when the media criticizes a politician, the first thing someone will say, but who are you? Do you have the moral standing? Why can't you resolve your problem in your union and you're trying to venture out into national politics? So I think we need to take a critical look at this situation tonight. And Mr. Abado, thank you for mentioning that. Because personally, I've had a series of behind the scenes discussions with other colleagues that this is just unacceptable. And let me stop there.
Alfonso?
Yeah, Mr. Ballo, welcome. Good to see you. You have a wealth of experience, definitely. So we will be trying to pick your brains in terms of the first of all the state of the media in Liberia, but also the role of the media, especially in democracy in general, but especially around election reporting and reporting around elections as a way of promoting democracy and helping the voters to understand their roles and the positions of the various candidates and therefore voting wisely. Um, so I will not go into the squabbles, unfortunate conflict in the PUL. I'd say is unfortunate, and I think that's enough. But I wanted to focus on the state of the Liberian media currently, and two, let's talk a little bit about what you perceive as the role of the media in these very critical elections that are coming up in Liberia.
Thank you, Alfonso. Thank you for the introduction there, Moses.
Yeah, thank you.
So we know that the media represents an integral part as an integrity institution, as a watchdog in a democratic setting. It plays a pivotal role in shaping the democratic process, especially during electoral campaigns. And Liberia is no different. And the reason why the Liberian experiment is quite interesting is the fact that Liberia has a turbulent history. And with the media being a part of that turbulent history, the media has maintained a level of credibility, I would say, up to this point where we now have this rift. But the media has been very, very integral in shaping history as we know it in Liberia today for good. For good. So the media role is crucial in ensuring transparency, accountability, and the overall health of the democratic system. We do not have a perfect democratic system. This is an experiment that we are undertaking, the Second Republic or the Third Republic for some people who might want to refer it because of the many um, turbulence that the state has experienced over the years. And so we're going to look at some drawbacks and some opportunities that the media encounters when participating in election campaigns, especially the season now that we have in Liberia. So I like us to look at one of these drawbacks and we can discuss it, and there will be others I will bring up, and hopefully we all can kick them around. And for those who are watching, they can also make their comments and all of that. One of the drawbacks is the bias and the sensationalism that colors reporting in Liberia. And this bias and sensationalism is not unique to the Liberian experiment. It is not. There are some media houses or outlets in Liberia that have been accused of favoring certain political parties or candidates. And this ultimately undermines their credibility as impartial sources of information. And we know that this bias and sensationalism can skew public perception as to how the public views candidates, how the public understands the credibility of those who are involved in the electoral process. And it can also manipulate voter opinion, distort the electoral process, and all of these things are negatives, which are the outgrowth of the bias and sensationalism that the media is, sometimes accused of. And there is a reason for the media bias and sensationalism. Now, don't get me wrong. Media bias, even in the great democracies like the United States, Canada, and other well-developed countries where the media is highly sophisticated, there is media bias. Good example, look at Fox News, look at CNN, look at the clientele, look at the viewers that they both, cater to. That's media bias in a way, but it is so sophisticated that to the ordinary eye or the ordinary ear, the ordinary viewer, you cannot actually distinguish. And that is the power of the media. In the Liberian society, where we have some challenges, a lot of challenges from economic to whatever you may call it, this bias is more of a hindrance in the practice of the craft. So I just want to also start with the bias and the sensationalism, and kind of invite your view on what you've seen, your own background as prior practitioners or current practitioners, and what you've done to ensure that that bias and sensationalism does not impact in a negative way your whole practice of being a media personnel. So we can discuss that.
So let me come in quick. Our days at LBS, and I remembered we were considered a state-owned broadcasting uh, organization. But even with the title state-owned broadcasting organization, we had a balance of, because there were warring factions that formulated a state council government. While it is true that the head of the state council government was a representation, quote unquote, of the populace, but yet those state council governments had their own followings and they had their own citizens who were depending on them for safety, security, and support. And I remember the late William Dewey. He was very, very. The guy was what's the word, cantankerous, or in a good way, because Dewey wanted to stay
To do
focused.
the right thing, yeah.
Yes, not
He
just
was an ambitious young man
yeah,
who he had some challenges, but he didn't let those challenges hold him down.
yeah. But one of the things that he was good at was to stay true to what he felt was right, and in the bravery of what he did, sometimes he got caught in the middle of how to go about it. But that's just an example of what's not happening now at LBS. From all indications, the LBS today is a pro-government LBS. So it's almost impossible for someone to take a stance, especially When the president directly, you know, appoints the director general, appoints the deputy, appoints everybody in leadership, it sounds like who, you know, going to take that side for the people. And with what we're talking about here, that balance, that ability to say, wait a minute, I work for the Liberian people and not a president. I work for the Liberian people and not particularly just the government. And I'm not sure how much training these folks have gotten to understand that someone has to speak for the people. Instead, if everyone is speaking for the government, propagating the government's agenda, then that's a problem. Then you come to some of the private radio stations that were just established to be pro government. And from what we hear, government is supporting these and providing sponsorship to these radio stations. And so you can see the broadcast, the propaganda, the trend of the news that they propagate, all in the favor of the government. So where are the people? Where's the taxpayer who pays the president's salary? Who pays the salaries of these um, directors and ministers and all these people who are in the hem of leadership? Who who talks for the people? And I think this is where the media has to take a stance. And I just wanted to throw that in when we look at it from a balanced perspective.
Well, look, the three of us, you, Mr. Abalo, and I, we had the privilege of working for LBS. And in theory, LBS is considered state radio, meaning that everything emanating out of LBS should be in the interest of the country. But you and I can agree that, some of us who had the opportunity of deciding news content, we had significant, challenges. Battle can speak to that as Assistant Director General for News and Public Affairs. Because if the Director General was appointed by, the president, the president would sit over there and tell the Minister of Information, say, hey, I don't want to hear this on the news. They call the Director General, and the Director General say, look, about it, that just can make the news. Many times we had to deal with those kind of situations. Take, for example, I had a situation, I was suspended for 1 month when I was editor in chief in the newsroom. The guys, when Mr. Taylor was president, they always had a habit. They would come 10 minutes to our major newscasts, our evening newscasts, and it will come with all these kind of shady press releases that they wanted in the news. So I had a situation one day, one of them show up with a press release, actually coming down hard on the U.S. government, and with all kinds of stuff in there that had the potential of creating more problem in the country. So when the guys brought the press release, and I decided not to use it, I held it, and it was this guy Reginald Gurish and another journalist from Mr. Taylor's camp. They came in the newsroom. So when they saw Bleedy, that time Bleedy was deputy for broadcasting. They came in the newsroom. Oh, Sandy, we want this thing in the news by 7 o'clock. So when I read the first two paragraphs, I knew that it was not in the interest of the country. I held it. So they kept running up and down. And guess what? It was Woolen Duet I was reading that day. Duet package. I did not include that story. Duet read the entire 50 minutes. Oh my God. It was like those guys wanted to eat me raw. They came in the newsroom, always said it. This guy is an enemy of the government. It's this, it's that. And immediately after that, I went to Bleedy. I took the press release and gave it to Bleedy. When he read it, two paragraphs, he said, man, Moses, man, go to your work. I see why we got you down there. But I'm just telling you the challenge, of being a gatekeeper in such an environment. So it's a significant challenge. And another challenge the media has, which the four all can speak to, is what? Extreme poverty. Our media institutions are vulnerable because a good portion of our reporters, first thing, they do not have working equipment. Two, they are not paid livable wages. When you cannot fend for yourself, you cannot sustain yourself. you are vulnerable. Just 2 weeks ago, I was told that the ruling party, Mr. George Weah, on the eve of kicking off the campaign, Mr. Weah decided to have a tete-a-tete with journalists. What's the purpose? When the journalists went for this tete-a-tete, they told everybody now they're taking microphone, cell phones, everything taken away. And we were told $60,000 was given to journalists, to help with the campaign. And five other journalists were even taken to Ghana, reportedly taken to Ghana, giving $25,000. These are what publishers, heads of major newspapers in the country. So it makes the job real difficult when the media is so poor. We do not have media market. How many advertisers do you have? Most media institutions survive at the mercy of what? Politicians. So the guys indirectly control the news content. That's our foremost problem.
Moses, let me just quickly
Yes.
let me just quickly chime in, and then Mr. Abalo,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Alphonso can come in. That is no excuse. Even when we were practicing, we didn't have anything. Matter of fact, the sophistication of equipment the guys are using today long surpassed what we were using.
Mhm.
We had a turntable, a cut machine, and you got to be ad libbing. That would make us so much we know how to talk, and play with this microphone. You got to
Yeah.
be ad libbing, taking a cassette, turning it around, flipping it, putting your clip, doing all of that. And we
Yeah.
leave from work, we barely got paid. I
Yeah.
left LBS to come to the States. I was owed more than a year and 6 months' salary. But
Mhm.
we didn't compromise the ethical part of what we stood for.
I know.
So I want to just point that poverty shouldn't take away your ability to be balanced, to be objective, to investigate, to be critical, and to put the truth out there. Because at some point you will be paid by people saying this man has integrity. And so the media today is a combination of citizen journalists and people who just looking for something to do, and everything now makes news. And because there's Facebook, they can't do it through all of this garbage is thrown out here to all of us, the consumers. We have to discern, be extremely perspicacious as to what is of importance and what is nonsense. So I think I just wanted to throw that in. Maybe Abalo and Faso can weigh
Yeah,
in.
Yeah,
yeah.
and,
Let
and,
me.
and quickly, guys, let me just provide this information. I'm sorry, Alfonso. The four of us will agree that the first law of nature is self-preservation. Yes, it is true that we want to do a professional piece of job, but you become vulnerable when you cannot feed yourself. That's why in developed countries, people who are in law enforcement, people who are ensuring that there's accountability in the system are paid well because they don't want these people to be vulnerable. And today, I can say right in Delaware and write an article and send $1,000 to Monrovia, whether it's anti-government or it's anti-peace, all of those peoples will run with it with just few dollars. It's the truth of the matter. That's what happening.
Let's hear from the other guys. Go
Go
ahead.
Yeah,
ahead.
let me come in and chime in.
Hmm.
Firstly, yes, I working for the Catholic Justice and Peace Commission. I myself personally was a victim of the censorship at LBS. My
Yeah.
show, the Justice and Peace Forum, was stopped multiple times, taken off the air by LBS because the government saw it as critical. So I'm aware of that. Mr. Barlow spoke to it, and I think everybody did. Coverage of, the coverage that media institutions decide to accord to issues or to candidates is very critical. It has to do with, and I think Barlow spoke to partisan media, which is driven primarily by business or just money. So there are people out there who want money and all of that. So they take money from people, and as a consequence of that, as you all said, they report any and everything, and forego their primary role, which is actually, um, you know, putting forth the right information, putting forth truthful information, making sure that whatever they put out there is truthful and challenging. whatever information is put out there by public servants and anybody really doing fact checking and making sure that what's out there is accurate so as to inform the people because that's the role of the media, right? The media is supposed to be, it's called the fourth estate for a reason. The three estates of government, executive, legislature, and judiciary. And then the fourth estate, which is the media, is the representative of the people to give voice to the people to become, get involved and remain engaged in the public discourse and in the running of the country. So our media, I mean, I have a critical view about ELBC. Maybe we'll get to that point later. At this point, I don't know if ELBC should even exist. Whether we should have, that institution, because definitely I do not think it's playing the role for which it was established, and I'm not sure if it will be able to ever play that role because it's become a partisan institution. I want to speak quickly to the issue of journalists, not doing their job as they should be doing because they are poor, or because they don't have money and because they have to feed themselves. That is true. That is the reality of the day. But I also think that there are things that can be done to address that. I mean, I've reached out to a number of people in Liberia. I've written publicly about that. So there's a reason why that happens. First of all, I believe very strongly that the people who are running the media institutions are not there because they just want to publish newspapers or run radio stations. They're there because they want to make money. And because they're there to make money, they should be able to pay the people who work for them accurately. The reason why they are not paying those people is because those people who work for them, A, do not have the power to make them, to pay them. It's because the institution that represents those journalists that work for them is not strong enough to push the employers to pay the journalists what they are due. And I've talked about how the president of Liberia, the structure and system of the president of Liberia, needs to be reformed to make it a union that actually advocates on behalf of members, which in this case is journalists. Currently, the president represents editors and media owners and journalists as well. Some of the editors and media owners become presidents of the president, secretary general of the president. Do you think they're now going to push themselves to pay the media, the journalists who work for them, more money? No, that's not going to happen. So, in terms of that, I think we need to either revamp the structure of the president of Liberia, and I'm afraid with all of the crisis in the president and its failure so far, that somebody else would just take over the landscape. That maybe another labor union will organize the media people, journalists, into a trade union and begin to negotiate for higher salaries and benefits for them with their employers, and the president will become irrelevant. So, so I think these are the issues that are critical. The president is losing its relevance, and is losing its relevance because of that. I don't think journalists even pay attention to that to them anymore.
And let me just add this quick, and Mr. Abalo can come in. You struck the point, but I also want to say that some of the folks who are going to these institutions are not journalists.
Yep.
They're just looking for a piece of job. They don't have the competencies. They're not developed and trained. They don't have the qualification. They've not gone to school for it. So they grab a cell phone and they're looking for something to do. Do you know how many people have contacted the issues room, want to be reporters on the ground for us? How many people? We tested one of them and he disappeared on us after taking some money, right? So that's the situation. So how are they going to make the kids to be paid well when they can't, when they're not coming with anything? They just want a job. And the opportunity to have a job means they can go to the legislators and to the ministers and to these people around the place, get kato and they get paid. So that's the comfortability there. So that's why some of them are not being paid or being paid, a handsome salary for them to sustain. I just wanted to throw that in there because
That's an important point.
yeah,
And before,
everybody now is a journalist in Liberia. I'm
yeah,
not.
it's an important point. But before Mr. Abalo comes in, I think it's the other way around. So if I was running a newspaper or radio station and I wanted credibility,
Equality.
and quality, that's what I will attract. Those people who come to go to work for those institutions don't just walk in and employ themselves and start working. They are employed by the owners of those media houses. And the reason why they employ people who are not qualified is because they don't want to pay them. And also because there's no standards. There's no real body that should set standards in terms of practicing journalists to work for those media institutions. That journal ever in every profession, in law, in accounting, in wherever, there's a body that certifies people and gives them credentials to be able to work, and they must meet certain qualifications. The reason why I open my newspaper and I say anybody can come from in the street and come out is they will bring the report to me and I'll publish it and I don't have to pay them. And the newsmaker will pay them and the newsmaker will pay me something as well. So that's why I think that practice in itself is undermining journalism in Nigeria.
Mr. Abalo?
Yeah, I think that the arguments that you guys have presented, they're all valid arguments for and against, and how these arguments and the perception of the media in Liberia, how they impact not just elections, but society in general, and how governance is impacted by the way the media operates, operate in the country. So those are valid argument. I wanted to raise something regarding ELBC, or the Liberia Broadcasting System Act of Legislature that set up LBS and the mandate and all of that, that is supposed to be the mouthpiece. If you look at the act that set up LBS, that act pretty much encompasses LBS being the mouthpiece for all interest in Liberia. The government usurped that act and kind of took over and made that the government mouthpiece. So, in effect, you have the government of Liberia using LBS, um, perverted the use of LBS, perverted the mandate of LBS. So that's a separate issue. Quickly, let me talk about my time at the LBC when I served as acting director general for news and public affairs. I was fortunate. Dr. Emma Soy, the late Dr. Emma Soy, was interim president. There was some level of accountability. There was some level of credibility when it came to. Um, there was no undue influence from Dr. Sawyer because of his own credentials as somebody who was democratic minded. So in a way, I was fortunate. Any pressure that we were subjected to at the time pretty much came from our own managers and supervisors who wanted to, pretty much say, oh, you know what, we're doing a good job and this is what I did and this is what I did. But there was no immediate or mandate from Dr. Sawyer to anybody to carry a particular story. And I can
Just to
pity
add quickly, Mr. Abalo,
Moses and what he went.
Mr. Abalo, can you hear
Yeah.
me quickly? But I heard that he was a media practitioner
Yes.
earlier in his growth.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe he understood.
At ELBC.
Yeah.
Exactly, at ELBC. So I can sympathize and empathize with what Moses went through. There were those pressures, especially with Charles Taylor, and all of that. But LBS, there has to be a concerted effort by the legislature. People who, you see, when you're electing people to go to the legislature, these are the kinds of questions. These are the kinds of credentials that our people, the media, should be holding these candidates to and asking them, how do you intend to rectify that issue at LBS? We're not asking those questions. Perhaps the sophistication of asking those questions hasn't even gotten to the media. We're far from that. And so when these people get to the legislature, the laws that they pass is way so far removed from these type of issues. And some of these lawmakers are in the opposition. They have no voice on national radio or the national the state broadcast. And you ask, but you don't have you don't have any critical view on national radio. You're in the opposition. Does that bother you? They're not even thinking along those lines. So I just wanted to mention that. But I wanted to make a comparison. It's not going to be a good comparison, but I wanted to mention the fact that even though ELBC or LBS is a government run and government patronized or whatever, they pay your salaries and all of that, the VOA is also an arm of the U.S. government, a propaganda, machinery of the U.S. government. Now, I'm not going to make the comparison of apples and apples because clearly what we have in Liberia nowhere matches what you have at the VOA. The VOA, even though it's a government mouthpiece, the journalism that is practiced, these guys to some extent have some independence to practice, and some of us have learned from the VOA. Um, Volcano also talked about the fact that even though we work at LBS, we also maintained our professionalism. We were not easily bought by outside influence and all. We practiced our craft with credibility. That is why when some of us appear among media folks or people get to know who we are, they have a lot of respect because they know that we were never tainted by the lure of $20 or whatever. There's still people now. I'm privy to information where there are people in the opposition who, when they hold these rallies that you see on Facebook, there's a list of Facebook TVs. There's a list, and they have a list of these people that they use for their rallies and all of that. Each of these TVs get $50. The big ones they get maybe $150 to carry these things. And again, the fact that the economic situation of journalists has totally reversed the aim and the objective of being a journalist to the extent that it has impacted our brothers and sisters who practice this craft back home, like you guys said. It is a sad thing. And I don't know how we address this issue, but until we address the economic and the business aspects of journalism, the what we're seeing, the practice that we're seeing among the ordinary journalists, the new media, the Facebook journalists, those things will continue to impact, the media back home. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, Moses.
Look, Mr. Abalo, well said. And like you said, how do we resolve this problem? The solution. When I had the privilege of serving as national president of Asia, one of the discussions that I held with media groups in Liberia was that we do not need multiplicity of radio stations. We do not need multiplicity of newspapers in Liberia. First, we do not have media market. How many advertisers are there? Because, like you guys have said, when you set up a newspaper, it's business. So, if you do not have advertisers, how are you going to pay Moses $7,500 a month as editor in chief when you can't even run the paper? Moses Sandy is not going to settle for $200. Then what do? You turn to someone who is not comparable to Moses Sandy to come and work for you for $50. That's why you had this brain drain in the media. The four of us here, if I can use us, how many of us here willing to go back to Liberia and work in any newsroom where somebody will pay you on say $1,000 a month? We're not ready to do that because that salary is not livable. It's not a livable wage for any of us here on this thing. So uh, the market is not there. Media institutions are extremely poor. As a result, it makes it difficult for these institutions to hire and retain qualified people. So they are turning to what? The semi-educated. That's why we have all of these ethical transgressions. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of trained journalists who will have problem with ethical transgression, but a good number of our people, like Volcano said, the citizen journalist. The man got his iPhone today. He's a journalist overnight, and these guys are all over the place. They gave them $25, they gave them $50. They are not looking at the bigger picture because the role of the media is to inform, educate, entertain. But they're not looking at that. They're only concerned about what? What do they get at the end of the day? That's our foremost problem.
Volcano, let me quickly chime in and then you can come in.
Yeah.
And I just want to speak a little bit about my own views when it comes to the multiplicity of the media in Liberia. I hold the view that the more diverse media that you have in Liberia is better for strengthening democracy because you have all different views and that presupposes that the media has responsible individuals who can put the news in context to help the less sophisticated in our society make intelligent decisions. So that's the caveat there. I would want more and diverse media, but media practitioners should undertake the responsibility to put the news in context and help the less sophisticated in making intelligent decisions to strengthen our democracy. I don't think that we should limit the number of media houses because of economic reasons. And the way you solve that problem is if you have a good media outlet, if you have credible news, you have a good business department, then those who have challenges with good reporters and all of that, they're not going to have the economic reward of people buying their paper or listening to their radio stations. They're not going to have that. So the challenge comes when you have good reporters, you have trained reporters, you have a good business department, and the ethical aspect is adhered to, you stand a better chance of thriving in that society rather than limiting media and diverse views in a democratic society. Our democracy needs diverse views, as many as we can have, but at the same time, we also need people who are adequately trained. We also need the business aspect, people who are adequately business savvy to run that, and the society will decide who survives. I think that would be my view on the media. And another thing is that I think there's some concern about having the media register, so that you can control, who does what. I think that's the downside, because one of the things we also experienced in the press union decades ago was the fact that the government of Liberia wanted, the Ministry of Information wanted journalists to register officially with the ministry. And that was an attempt to curtail unfavorable reportage. So if the government got up tomorrow morning and they felt that Alphonso's editorial was just not palatable to them, because you're registered, they could pull your registration, and all of a sudden you're no longer a journalist in the eyes of the government. So we kicked against that, and we told the government that journalists, we can self-regulate journalists in-house. The press union can do that, and that was the genesis of having in-house, committee to look at ethical transgressions and all of that. Here in the U.S., you have journalists who are professionals in other areas who become journalists and work within the major network. Good example, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. He's a neurosurgeon. He didn't go to journalism school, but now that he's been working for almost a decade plus, he has honed those skills, and his professional training has now translated, and he has now become a good example of how professionals can translate their professional knowledge into journalism. So when you start to limit who can be a journalist, you have to register. If somebody has nursing background in Liberia, you're already cutting that person out when that person can hone their skills as a journalist to contribute the nursing knowledge and transfer that. It only takes the training, the in-house training, and the experience, and working with a more experienced journalist to hone those skills. I just wanted to mention that.
And I think you're right because with big media institutions, there are professionals and experts who will represent certain career paths. So for CNN, the medical journalist or expert is Sanjay Gupta, someone who is a criminal, science person. I've seen a guy who they lean on for many things when it comes to criminal justice. I've seen this lady who handles what they call it, aircraft issues, like when a plane crashes. She's an expert to bring her in. So yes, that's one of the things that can happen. But this is a point I want to make, and I like the point you made, but I think it's overdone, Mr. Abalo, when you say you like the playing field be a little open so everyone can come at it and throw a shot for the multiplicity of what Moses is saying, that many media institutions, the better the merrier. But I also think that the proliferation has to do with conflict of interest. And for me, who followed Liberia over the last several years, many of these media institutions are owned by people who are working in the government, which is a major conflict of interest. Their support are being delivered by the government. Why is Edwin Snow owning a radio station when he is a sitting legislator or senator? Why is this guy who is at the NSA owning Freedom FM when he is closest to the government, the ruling party, and propagating the agenda of the ruling party to the point where most of his support, or almost all of his support, is coming from the ruling party? So that's where the check and balance must come. People shouldn't just open radio station because they want to open radio station. We got to know where the interest lies and whether it is being a conflict of interest. Just like we talked about conflict of interest here for many of the different
Yeah,
professions.
professionals.
Like
Yeah.
we talked about the Minister of Health owning clinics and many hospitals in the country, where the government ambulance at JFK is running patient to her place, uh, where the Minister of Education has his private school. So is this good for a country like Liberia that is thriving? So I think that's something we need to look at uh, and address, because many of those institutions we need to know where they come from. Even the sitting president, why does he need now the King's FM? Why does he just sell it and recluse himself from it and say, hey, it's a conflict of interest for me to be president of Liberia and still have my private radio station propagating my agenda? Where is that happening here in America? Where do you see a sitting senator owning a radio station? I need to know. Maybe the research is there. We need to do it. Where is Joe Biden
Well,
owning a radio station? Maybe Alphonso know. It seems like he want to jump in. But I'm just pointing out some of these things why we have all of this proliferation, and it doesn't make sense when people work for the government and can influence their resources out of the government's coffers to support their personal agenda and propagate a political agenda. That's the point I'm
so
making.
And
so
and
before
if
Mr. Abalo comes in, I want to talk a little bit about this, and I want to break it down into two parts. So part number one is the proliferation aspect, and part number two will be the conflict of interest in using government resources. So in terms of proliferation, I agree with Mr. Abalo. I believe, because we create a slippery slope if we put measures into place to say who can register a newspaper or radio station or television station and who cannot. At what point does that end? Who has the authority to tell people Moses can register a radio station, but Alfonso cannot register a radio station, and Volcano cannot register a newspaper, but Mr. Abalo can't? When we do that, and we all saw that in the 80s and 90s, when government was closing down media institutions because they had the authority, as Mr. Abalo said, to give licenses to register people, and therefore they also had the authority to revoke licenses when they did not like what a media house reported. And I also agree with Mr. Balo that the more we have, the better, because of course we will have divergent views. Now, we shouldn't stop people from registering media houses, but as Mr. Abalo said, if the media institutions do the right thing, there will be natural elimination. Part of the problem we have in Liberia is that our so-called mainstream media institutions are not even credible. So they're not distinguishing themselves from those other partisan institutions. They all are doing the same thing, if not even worse. That is the problem.
And I
If
think it
as
leans
a
on survivability, like
yes,
everybody's saying,
but
survivability.
if you are professional, I believe if you are professional, as he said, you have a strong business, office, and you attract the right people and you do the right thing, people will follow you regardless. Um, so and then those who are not doing the right thing, who people are not following, whose newspapers are not being bought, will go through the process of natural elimination. My fear, and I think Mr. Bala spoke to that, is putting measures into place to say who should open a media house and who shouldn't open a media house will create a slippery slope whereby the authority now decides which voices to be heard and which voices to not hear. Now, I think that's slightly different from the conflict of interest piece that you raised, or taking government resources to run private institutions. I think that's totally different. If anybody takes government resources to run a private institution, that's theft, that's corruption, and that's not the same as proliferation of media institutions. That's why I wanted to separate that. And that's a different way and method of dealing with that because you're stealing government resources to run an institution, which is in itself is criminal in nature, and that should be dealt with criminally, but not by imposing restrictions on all media or everybody who wants to open a media institution. If Mr. Weah opens his radio station and he's not using government money, he's using his private personal money to run his radio station and he's doing things that are attracting people to the radio station, that's the business environment. That's
So stop there, Alfonso. Let's play the
yeah,
devil advocate. You mean the
yeah.
president should own his personal radio station? Come on now. Come on
Why
now.
not? Why not?
Why? You tell me. I'm asking
So
you.
I'm saying, so
Take
I
the
was
case.
because just as I have a right to own a radio station, I believe he has a right to own a radio station. Now, if that radio station is getting undue support or preference from government, if Mr. Weah and his people are taking government resources to that radio station, if they're using ELBC facilities or towers and other people are not using it, those things that's different. But to choose who can own and run a media institution, I'm just afraid of the slippery slope. In terms of the look, is that a good thing?
But look,
Perhaps not. But legally, we shouldn't advocate for barriers against who owns and who doesn't own a media house.
okay, I would like to come to the defense of what Volcano said. I'm not advocating. I don't think Volcano is also advocating that our political leaders should not. But what is the essence of the president of the Republic of Liberia
Mhm.
owning a private radio station? Liberia has a national broadcaster, the Liberia Broadcasting System. The Liberian government has the Ministry of Information that has the responsibility of propagating government messages.
Mhm.
The ministry also has what the New Liberian. They also have other outlets. All the government has to do, or all the president has to do the right thing. You don't need no private radio station. It doesn't have to be legislated, but this is just basically common sense. Make sure the people are fair, their needs are being attended to, and the good will play out in the media. Adhere to the rule of law. Provide for the people in the areas of health, education. Do those things. You don't need no extra propaganda. So you're sending all your own radio station. You have to pay those people. The government has to pay the ELBC people. Now you're paying people what? $45 at the Ministry of what? Information. And I heard you guys earlier, well, um, um, we should have proliferation. The question that comes, do you have the market? Do you have the media market? Of course, it's a resounding no. We don't. Just in Monrovia, I am told, we have over 100 community radio stations. Who is listening to who? You have more than 50 newspapers. So basically, I'm proposing that the four of us here, Mr. Abado, you, Volcano, and myself, will say, hey guys, let's set up a professional entity. We put our resources together. That will make us stronger. We will have the capability to recruit and retain qualified individuals. We don't have to pay people $50 a month. When you pay people well, you set standard. If they don't meet up with any of those standards that you set, you terminate. You can tell them, hey, my man, look, you're executive management reporter. But if I hear that the president called a news conference and you went there, you took a prime envelope, your job is gone. Of course, the reporter will not go after people looking for gratuity or, as we call it in Liberia, cateau. That's what I'm saying. Do you know that even in today's Liberia, if you run up a newspaper that is quote unquote considered critical, you may not get advertisement. So if you run a very powerful independent newspaper, you have no advertisement. They tell all these business people that are supposed to do business with you, they say, oh, you are advertising with Abalo. I mean, you are advertising with Abalo. Abalo is anti-government because he's critical of the government. My man, if you're going to do business with Mr. Abalo, then we're not going to do business with you. They strangulate you. They find ways to strangulate you. These are some of the challenges the media in Liberia is faced with. So, in summary, I'm saying the smaller the group, the better it is. I'm not saying that we should literally start who becomes and who doesn't, but I'm
So
saying that we
Moses,
should put our
before you
resources
end,
together. Yes.
Moses, I just wanted you
Yeah.
to add this piece. So how do
Mhm.
you propose that we make it smaller? Like
But
through what measures do we?
I just suggested that.
Yeah,
People,
you said it should be small.
Yeah,
I'm saying
yeah,
why
no,
should
no.
we
I
make it
think Moses said it before, where
I just said it.
if,
Yeah.
if the issues room,
Yeah.
phone TV
smaller?
are synonymous propagating the same agenda, why don't we come together?
Yes.
Mr. President, we have fucking clone church. When
Yeah.
Prince Johnson got church and they're all preaching the same gospel. I'm coming
Yeah.
to follow.
So
Yeah.
you're saying it
So
should be voluntary.
yeah,
What I'm saying
voluntary. That's
it
what
should
we're
be
saying.
voluntary.
Voluntary. Yeah. We all come
Hold
together.
on,
Yeah.
hold
Okay,
on,
so you're saying it should be
hold on.
voluntary. We
Yeah,
shouldn't force people to be.
yeah,
And if
but
we also decide not to come together, we should.
so
Yeah.
let me finish my analogy here.
Yeah.
For the clone church, Prince Johnson church, why did
Yeah.
we come together when one time ago they were darlings, right?
Yeah.
We have got to the presidency through the kingmaker, Mr. Prince Johnson. So why can't they just take the fucking clone and Prince Johnson church and make it one
And
church
make it
and have
one.
separate church? So there's a
Yeah.
new practice
Yeah.
we're talking about in the media. But just
Yeah.
before you guys come in, let me go to intermission quick. You're joining us here on the 178th broadcast of the Issues Room. We're having a great time here, great conversation. We have Mr. Emmanuel Abalo, a veteran Liberian journalist who is contributing in many ways to this conversation. He's also a writer. He's written 5 books. Some of the books, matter of fact, they're already on Amazon. So put his name, go for Emmanuel Abalo, and you'll see the different books. I will intend to do one purchase tonight. I think I like one of the books he talked about the where the Civil War started, or the PRC is something I just like to know what that story is about. Alphonso Moses, myself, we're here on Tuesdays and Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. and 11 p.m. Greenwich uh, time in Liberia. We call it Liberian time. So if you just join us, we'd like to welcome you. All of you, our viewers, will come to you. Tonight we're going to initiate Mr. Abalo of what type of country is this? And we also have a beautiful memory lane here tonight, reading by Dr. Mane Sumo, a very good one we'll be carrying momentarily. But again, we say welcome. Please continue to share the link. We see the numbers are going up. If you are a media practitioner, this is the kind of conversation you want to tune into. Also, if you own a media institution, this is where you want to be tonight. So we encourage you to join us here tonight. But just before we continue the conversation, Hamilton Zilli wrote here, how can we juxtapose or oppose rather the two, freedom of press, the proliferation of radio stations, and the ethical principles that govern said institutions? How do we put them side by side? Let's
So
hear from
let me take a crack at this. And I think tonight it is Alphonso and myself versus.
Moses and Volcano.
Moses and Volcano.
I tend to agree with what Alfonso is saying, that we should not, as a matter of practice in a capitalist society, in a democratic society, limit or have as a matter of regulation strict laws on who can and who cannot own media institutions. Let me give a good example of why I'm thinking along these lines with Alfonso. The late Prime Minister of Italy, Silvio Berlusconi, he was a media mogul. He had a host of television stations, radio stations. That was how he made money in the private sector. He became a politician and he still maintained his business. The way that we can address the proliferation of local media, especially where you have government officials and who have immediate regulatory control, having a conflict of interest in something like that, I would propose that we, first of all, strengthen the press union and allies of the press union to lobby for laws at the legislature that will prohibit these individuals from, while in office, actively involved in the running of their radio media institutions. But you cannot get that done unless, one, the press union is credible, the press union has influence, and the press union can exact these types of concessions. But if we're divided as we are today, nobody's going to look at us. So, and then you also corral uh, allies to work with you as a press union, and you go and you make these representation to the lawmakers, and you put on the books that if you're a lawmaker while you're in office, you have to put that business in trust or whatever. You cannot be, intimately involved while you're in office. That also goes to the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, for all of those officials in their department. So Berlusconi was prime minister, but he had people running those media institutions. Those media institutions had some level. I'm not going to say that they were completely void of any influence of Berlusconi because he was prime minister. I didn't think that those radio stations and television stations openly criticized him. They knew who was paying, their bill, but at least on the surface, he was not intimately involved. He had a board that ran the organization. We can do the same, but we're not going to be able to get there until we strengthen the press union as a credible institution that can lobby the legislature to get these kinds of laws in place. So that's how we address that type of issue of conflict of interest. Are we going to achieve that anytime soon? I doubt it, because the press union has a lot of work to do. We have, seen the deterioration and the rendering of the press union over the years, and we now have to rebuild in order to get that done. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and quickly,
Thank
we
you.
can.
And I wanted to quickly
Also,
say something, and then maybe I can ask guys if we
Please,
can go something else. Yeah, I'm not worried about proliferation. By the way, I think the more the merrier. We have Wait Up The same Yana boy with a market man and market woman all sitting together, they're all selling bunny. There's nothing wrong with that.
And they got a customer
And they get their custom man who will go to the particular woman
directly to that woman.
or whatever based upon the services that they render to that custom man or to that custom woman. That's what I think we should do. That's what democracy requires. And I agree with Mr. Vallo. Where there's a conflict of interest, then laws and safeguards should kick in. In the absence of that, we shouldn't put into place any mechanisms to restrict so-called proliferation of media institutions. I think we get rid of proliferation of media institutions if the president becomes stronger and sets certain standards. B, if we said, well, journalists and media institutions begin to differentiate themselves from kids in the street who are holding their cell phone or whatever. If you go in with this young man with his cell phone in his hand and you are receiving $50 and reporting the same thing, what differentiates you? What makes you better than he is or she is? That, I believe, is the fundamental problem in Liberian media and journalism, not proliferation.
Let me
But
add
look,
this quick.
yeah.
We're coming quick.
Mhm.
Let me add this. So we're talking proliferation here, but there's a technical side to proliferation. For me, who continue to research, I was thinking about opening a radio station in Liberia, and I said it's just going to be the same old because when you start to do well, it's about 6 months and everybody start to dissipate. Your audience disappear. No matter what you do, if you're not, you know, uh, supporting
Champion.
or being a part of the status quo. But here's the other thing that will kind of dwindle proliferation. We're talking about equipment, right? We're talking about the bandwidth. We're talking about frequencies. How many frequencies can go on the bandwidth? If you bring 1,000 radio stations in Liberia, it would just be complete static, right? Because you wouldn't be able to feed 1,000 radio stations on the bandwidth of the FM. Nobody wants to do AM now. Nobody's doing medium wave. Nobody doing short wave. Everybody wants to be on FM, right? So it depends on the quality of your transmitter, your tower, and you can jam a lot of those folks who come in with 1 kVA when you can come with 20 kVA and cover the entire West African sub-region. So I think it would be another way, the sophistication of equipment, what you bring to the table, what type of tower, what type of bandwidth, and you would jam some people and they will eventually die. What do you guys think?
But
Yeah,
look,
I think
Jeremiah, if I could just come in quickly on that, we all are on the same page. It's just at the angle from which we are speaking. I don't think Volcano and I are saying that well, we need a law that would make it unlawful for you to have proliferation. That is not what we are saying. We are saying that based on the limited media market that we have, people with the same media philosophy should come together, pull their resources together, pay people well, and be able to have what? Viable media entities. What good it is to have over 50 newspapers, but in terms of content, terrible content, terrible journalists. You have high ethical transgression because people are literally going after what? Money to sustain themselves. That's not helpful. That's not helpful in terms of proliferation. You want quality. That's what we're looking for. Let me give you a typical example here. The other day, I had the opportunity of listening to Mr. Waterspoon, the guy who has 4 radio stations and a television station in Liberia.
Actually, three television stations.
No, he has 4. Anyway, but I did listen to him. After those guys, talking the code and all of that, he was venting his anger. He said, "Look, on a monthly basis, the expenditure of sustaining those media outlets is so much, but yet he doesn't generate anything. No income. Advertisers are not there. People want media coverage. They cannot afford. Mr. Abado, Alphonso. In fact, we all are broadcaster. We know how costly it is. Broadcast journalism is very costly. One camera, you know how much it costs? If you want to run a real television station, we're not talking about cell phone television stations. We're talking about a real broadcast entity.
Abalo TV. Abalo
Yeah.
TV.
Oh yeah, Moses Sandy TV. You
On
know,
a tripod.
the man send some
But the
for
whole
and
thing
he think
Abalo
he call it
TV.
Moses Sandy TV. And you know, so what
Mostly,
we're talking
I
about?
think the market forces will take care of that problem.
Yeah,
The
but
market
look,
forces will
no,
intervene very
but
quickly
listen,
to
yeah,
cancel that problem.
Alfonso, let me just complete my thought. What I'm saying is that sometimes it's good for us to do some rational thinking around this thing. That is the problem. How do we resolve this problem? We want media viability. That's what I'm saying. We want media viability. We want independence. We want quality work, not multiplicity. And I'm not in any way proposing that people should be literally barred from establishing. But what good is it to have 200 radio stations when you can't even go beyond Kakata?
So I think I'm
Yeah.
sharing the views of the
Yeah.
colleagues here. They're
Yeah.
right. That
Mhm.
leave the proliferation open, and we just chime in with some other mechanisms that will
Mhm.
shrink the proliferation.
Okay.
Alfonso mentioned, Abalo mentioned, and I just introduced
Yeah.
a whole new topic: equipment, technology can
Yeah.
shrink the proliferation. Let's hear from Mr. Abalo.
Yeah, so very good discussion. I'm excited about this discussion,
Thank you.
and I want to recognize my friend and brother here, Gregory Stem, who's
Yeah,
watching
great.
us. Hi,
Yeah.
Gregory. It's good to see you on here. Technology. For all of you on here, you know the kind of equipment that we used when we during our prior days.
Yeah.
This is all substandard stuff that we used, but we still got quality broadcasts out there to the extent that we could control it. Journalism defines you as a journalist. It is not the equipment and all of that. It defines you as a journalist. That's the good thing about that. And we did our best, and we showed that we were innovative and we're able to get the information out. And people look on those days as the good old days. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud of the colleagues who worked during that time. One of the challenges we have is technology and the non-availability of high-tech equipment, including high-speed internet in the country. Journalism is not a very lucrative business. It is fraught with a lot of problems. People get into there's some people who get into journalism and they say they're not carrying news because they don't want to come, loggerheads with the government, and they all they want to do is play music, you know. But if you're getting into the media to make money in the Liberian society, we are not at the level where equity firms can come together, buy media houses, flush them with money and equipment, give them time to develop and start making money. We're not there yet. Here in this country, you have people who have 4, 5, 7 radio stations. You have equity firms that put money in there, newspapers, radio, televisions, and all of that, streaming services, and they give it time. They pay the journalists and all of that. They give them the best equipment, the best headquarters to work overtime. Then they're going to see their return on their investment. We're not there yet in Liberia. Until we get to the point where the government is going to start getting these foreign investors and maybe showing them the way towards the media and see how we can develop the high speed internet. That is a prerequisite. High speed internet where we can stream. And you have business people who are willing to invest. We're not there yet. That challenge is still there. For us to overcome that, there's some things that have to improve. Like we said, the economy, stability, all of those things, business and foreign investors coming in. Because if a foreign investor comes in and he wants to get his message out, he wants to expand, he's going to have to use the media. Volcano, we're just having a conversation this weekend where we said, there's a brother in Buchanan who's trying to, stand up a TV there, and he's struggling. But there are big corporations in Nimba and in Buchanan that, he can go and talk to and see if they can barter, for service, not actual money, maybe equipment. And I'll give you guys advertising time. You're not going to influence my editorial policy or anything of that sort. Those are innovative ways that you can improve the media. And I also wanted to quickly mention something you talked about, the Spoon Network. Now, some of these problems that we have is self-inflicted. If you have a media house as an owner and you make the conscious decision to sit on there as an opinion host, not a journalist, an opinion host, your opinions are a slippery slope. Like, Alphonso would just say, that's a slippery slope. Your opinions may not be fact-based. And when people do not like your opinions, they are not going to patronize you, and you're going to struggle with your media house to attract business. I would venture to say this is what is happening to Spoon. They're opinion hosts, not journalists. They practice as if they're journalists. Their opinions are sometimes not fact-based. And some people have turned away from that. And they're not going to, patronize that business. Now, as a journalist, you're separated from opinion. You're promoting facts, and you stand a better chance of winning over people. That's why I said you got to have a good business office. Your reporting has to be credible, because your advertisers are your board members, in quote, your board members who decide if they're going to patronize you or not. So I just wanted to mention that.
That was a very powerful point.
That's a powerful point.
Yeah.
Fox News. Look at Fox News.
You
Go
demonstrated
to
that.
Fox News opinion shows. It's horrible from my, point of liberal point of view. But also listen to Fox News news. Listen to how Fox News even covers election reporting. Fox News was the first to report that Donald Trump had lost and Biden had won. They also have a fact-checking institution. So again, is the model that you put together. When it comes to their news, they do their best to report accurately. It is the opinion pieces in which they put in all of their different opinions and all of that. When it also comes to covering elections, they do an extreme and doing polling. Fox is one of the best media, media institutions when it comes to doing polling, and when it comes to exit polls in elections and giving election results. But those departments are separated from their opinion sections of the institution. That's critical. Having said so, if I get your indulgence, gentlemen, give in the interest of time, I want to move us and Mr. Abalo to the point of really looking at the current role of the media in the upcoming elections.
But this is where I was going. This is where I was going now.
Thank you.
We talked about all of the drawbacks,
Mm.
and the flyer did say that we talked about all of the drawbacks here, so we can see now. So, what would the media do with all these drawbacks as we now traverse to October 10th? Are there opportunities to be credible, to be informed based, to be investigatory, to be factual, to be balanced, considering all these drawbacks we just pointed for over an hour? Let's start a conversation.
So yeah, very good. I wanted to close out the last section by mentioning that additional drawbacks include misinformation and fake news. We are not immune from that. We also have the challenge of limited access to information in Liberia, because that can hamper the ability of the media to set the agenda and provide the kind of information that people need to make the type of decisions that will foster improvement in society, and also the ethical concerns which we we talked about. Now, there are opportunities to addressing some of these issues, such as educating and informing voters. But how do we get to these opportunities? We have to, first of all, strengthen, we have to train, we have to sustain those who are making the honest effort. And like I said, Liberia is not in a situation where you have equity firms, you have individuals, you have private organizations like the National Endowment for Democracy or whatever that can grant monies and training opportunities to train individuals, to strengthen media houses. I mean, some of that has been done over the years. But then these journalists, obviously, they fade off the stage and you have new people coming in. So we don't have a mechanism where these journalists are able to transfer their skills. So one of the ways we can contribute to that so that we don't have a deterioration in the skills that new journalists are picking up is to begin to be intentional about helping our new journalists, volunteering our mentorship, perhaps identifying individuals who we can sponsor to go to, the mass comm department, give a little scholarship or something as individuals. That is where we can start. Nobody's going to do it for us. We've seen that. So the deterioration in the media back home is going to continue unless, for some of us who are fortunate enough, can step up and say, you know what, I'll feel some pain, but I want to sponsor maybe two kids, two individuals, a female and a male, to go to a local journalism school. I know that Jonathan, the former BBC reporter, has a school. The former president, Kwekwe, has a school. Identify something like that. Once we have them in place, then we begin the process of informing adequately and incredibly informed. It's going to be a very painful and long exercise, but we got to start somewhere. That will be one opportunity. We can talk about others, but that will be one of the opportunities I've seen.
Moses, what do you think is an opportunity as our folks, cover these elections come October 10th to ensure credibility, balanced, objective reporting that will benefit the Liberian people, the country, and particularly educate the electorates?
The role of a credible media in this election is very critical. Uh, Liberia is at a crossroad. This election, as people often say, the outcome will be consequential. The outcome will determine whether the country moves forward or not. So, the role of the media in reporting objectively is very, very important. That is why, again, we have to take into consideration some of the obstacles that we just talked about. A lot of things going to happen. People will want to decide the news content, and the media has that capability of shifting public opinion. Take for example, like what I talked about earlier. On the eve of the kickoff campaigning in the country, the president decided to hold a tete-a-tete and reportedly disbursed $60,000 to journalists. After that, I saw publications in the papers, headline that seemed to support the re-election of Mr. Weir. I'm not opposed to Mr. Weir. I'm just being objective here. Uh, we want journalists to write objectively, not we don't want people work to be influenced by inducement, and that's the challenge that we have right now. How do we make our media in Liberia credible? How do we manage this? You have media institutions assigning journalists Even like we're talking here on these various radio stations, you have journalists taking side. Oh, I support the Unity Party. I support the ANC. Our role, we need to be what? Neutral, right, Mr. Abalo? Neutrality is the hallmark of good journalism, telling the stories as they are. But now, if I'm going to say I have a side, you Volcano, you have your side, then who's going to talk for the larger public?
So Moses, do journalists vote?
Yeah, journalists have the right to
But I
vote. You
think I
can go and
think I think I
exercise the
think
right.
I think is more secret, right?
No,
Right.
you can go and vote.
But
You
no,
can
what I'm
vote.
no, what
Yeah,
I'm saying, it should be secret, right? Your vote should be a
yeah,
personal thing.
personal. Yeah,
I'm just trying to
So
answer Mr. Abalo's
yeah,
question.
which is more of a transgression? You voting secretly, supporting a particular candidate, which you have a right to do. If you, I mean, you have to exercise your
The
political
franchise.
franchise.
hmm
But I think the thin line there is that you're not a flag bearer for a particular candidate in your reporting. You have
that's
a
what I'm
duty
saying.
to you have a duty to the public and not to
Absolutely,
your candidate. So you
that's
can
what I'm
vote,
saying.
but we don't want you in the media with your bias slanted in such a way that it impacts
You're reporting.
right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
about it. That's the point I was trying to drive. As human beings, we all have our own leaning. We all have our personal biases. But basically, what I'm saying and what we all saying here is that we do not want our personal biases to supersede the national interest. That's the point. And this is what we want the media to do. Tell the stories as they are.
All right, let's
But
hear
again,
from
Mr.
So,
Abalo, how do we do that in the wake of all these things we're talking about?
so
All
let
these
me come
problems.
in with trying to answer
Yeah.
that question in terms of whether we have an opportunity or the media has an opportunity currently to cover the elections and to promote democracy and peace in Nigeria. I
Yeah.
believe so, and I believe it's easy for to be done. It's easy and it's accomplishable. Um, for example, if a media institution got like one of the things we talked about earlier was like Brother Bala mentioned Sanjay Gupta, I mean he's a professional, he's a doctor, but he was brought in. Our media institutions can begin to be credible and show that they are credible and actually cover the election process or and promote democracy, but maybe venture into that. What prevents them, for example, from getting a lawyer who has expertise in election law, to be a panelist or a guest to talk about election law? What does election law actually say? Whether they're following it or not following it, who's violating it, etc. There's nothing wrong with it. Any media institution that begins to do that right now, I can tell you, will attract viewers or listeners and will build some credibility for itself. What's wrong with media institutions hiring data people or just bringing them in as guests to, talk about, voter registration numbers here and there and how it, in the last elections, who voted for whom, where the people vote, and projecting things. When you begin to have those conversations, you attract people. What's wrong with, media institutions hiring or even just bringing historians on board, to discuss the history of elections in Liberia, how elections have been flashpoints of violence and how that can be avoided going forward in the past. I mean, going forward. So again, these are ways by which Liberian media can begin to make themselves credible and positively impact the elections and democracy in general. Real quickly, take Spoon. I don't and Spoon, because you mentioned Spoon TV earlier. One of the good things, Spoon is one of the media institutions that a lot of people listen to. One of the things they did that attract people to listen to them, which is genius in my view, is that they didn't see the space, the social media space, to just the ordinary boys, running around in the streets and doing it. They also put people in the street with cell phones as well. So they're competing in that space. Where did they get that from? And I hope they did. New York Times, Washington Post, all of that. When they saw that people were not buying physical newspapers and stuff, what did they do? They went digital. They went online. Some of them even have little clips of videos right now that they post online. So people go there to them. Again, we have to be, our media people in Liberia have to begin to be innovative and creative. And that's how you take over the market. That's how you project yourself as being credible. And that's how you even deal with the issue of proliferation that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Most
You
people
know,
listen to Spoon TV than listen to a lot of other institutions. Yeah, I'm sorry.
right.
So quickly before you come in, Mr. Abalo, I'm going to open the line right now. The number to call is 404-272-2808. 404-272-2808. Talk to us. We'd like to hear from you. Chime in, make your points. Again, 404-272-2808. From what we've been encountering, haven't been able to ratify. If you call, we will have to put the phone to the mic the old way. we're still gonna go back anti to Liberian, but it's still going to come through. So call 404-272-2808 and be engaging. We'd like to hear from you. If you are a citizen journalist, call. We got some tips for you. If you are a practicing media practitioner who's going to be covering these elections, we got some tips for you. Or maybe just share your perspective, your challenges, the opportunities that you are enjoying. We'd like to hear from you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Volcano. And quickly on the citizen journalist piece, I wanted to mention that that is not going away. It is here.
Mhm.
And the citizen journalists are now challenging traditional journalism by their type of reporting. So the traditional journalists now have to be innovative. They have to come up with new ways to be credible and to also get the news in context. The citizen journalist is going to capture whatever is happening with a phone or whatever. There are some drawbacks being a citizen journalist who has no background in ethics and all of those things. Because, for example, you can't, let me put it this way. If you're going to interview Yeke Koluba live, as a citizen, even as a traditional journalist, are you prepared? Are you prepared? Do you want to go live with this individual? You all know what I'm saying, you know. Uh, but our people continue to undertake and to seek out this individual because they see the number of people who come to watch when this individual is on and doing what he's doing. There's a whole audience for that. I'm not interested in that. I mean, I'm interested in what he has to say, but I'm not going to carry this person live. I mean, that's the editorial, judgment I'm going to undertake, not carrying this person live.
And you said that, and I'll let you continue, but you
Yeah.
said something that is so significant. People are now looking for numbers. You hear
Yes.
people come, oh, I'm not going to speak until we get 1,000 people. I'm not going to talk until we get 5,000 people. And then it
Yeah.
comes, they can't say anything that makes sense. And I'm like, why are you wasting my time? Right? So it's not about the numbers, it's about content, the credibility, the medium through which the contents are brought. But I just wanted to weigh in on that. So continue, sir.
Yeah. That's important. Yeah, it's important because look at your stats now. This is a very important topic. How many people do we have? I mean, they prefer to be looking at something else or listening to music. And
Where the
again,
cousin
that's
Marcos.
fine. Yeah, I'm fine. People have choices they can make. But Moses, you were asking, how do we address some of these challenges? And that's where we are. And again, I talked about the fact that we should, as practitioners, begin to be intentional about offering training. Volcano and I were just over the weekend trying to provide long distant learning training for a group of guys who say they want to be journalists. But we had some technical issues there. But those are the kinds of things you want to continue and
So let me
you
bring
take that
let me bring
initiative.
this caller in quick since the caller is here.
Yeah. Let's have the call.
Caller, your name and where you calling from?
I'm calling from Dover, Delaware. This is Fetchy Money.
Hey, Forjay, come on, my man. Welcome to the show. Good to hear from
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
All right.
I just
Can you
yes, I
guys hear
just got
4J?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Make your contribution quick.
yes. I just got question to ask people like you, well experienced journalists like you, Mr. Moses Sandy, and your guest studio. Has the government ever or anybody from LBS ever contacted you told like you to go back home and train those young journalists? Because I think 2 days ago I was listening to Spoon Network, and one of the journalists had gone to a town. I think he returned back to studio, and they were asking him which town he wanted. He didn't know where he was, or where he came from. So the questions they're supposed to ask, they don't know how to ask questions. Even though they do have the desire to become a journalist, but I feel like they need people like you, Moses Cindy, and the guests in studio to mentor them, because I feel like the questions they're supposed to ask, they don't know how to ask questions.
Thank
So
you.
I don't know whether the government have ever contacted people like you to go by and train people, or those schools that are teaching journalism. Whether they contacted people like you.
Thank you. Thank you. Gentlemen, Mr. Fudge you question. I would just say, since I'm in the lead, no, no one. Even when I go to Liberia and try to visit LBS, the people scared. They say, "Oh, the other man won't come take our job." So that's the
Right.
perception. I stay
Right.
away. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Right. Unfortunately, Volcano is right. We've not been contacted, and even if we were contacted, our style of journalism is going to conflict with the reality on the ground. Seriously,
That's a very good point.
conflict with the reality on the ground.
Moses, you want to wait? Sorry, let me unmute you quick because we're getting
Okay.
feedback.
hmm from my end, I would just like to say that at a personal level, nobody has reached out to me asking for any form of a training. But when I had the opportunity of serving Aja as national president, Aja, conducted, some training for journalists in Liberia. And even now, Mr. Mason administration has also been able to do that. Virtual training, with colleagues back home. That has been helpful. Another bitter experience I had was that, can you imagine, colleagues at LBS, the current Minister of Information, when he was at LBS as Director General, and to tell you how people think about some of us. I had a privilege. I was invited for an interview on ELBC Radio. They reached out to me. We set the time. And just a few hours to the time, I got a phone call from Monrovia. And the reporter said to me that he got a call by his boss. I mean, from his boss, that, hey, Moses Sandy is our enemy. He should not be heard on ELBC Radio. So you can imagine that people having those kind of thought about you. You think they're gonna call you to say come and train? People feel intimidated when they see other people who have different mindset of doing things. So that's the situation we are faced with.
Anything from the end, Alfonso?
Well, so I thought Frederick's question was to ELBC journalists, so that's why I said
But
not
just
to.
just
No,
just bring up
no, but you are journalist too, man. Yeah, yeah.
stop.
No, so I haven't been invited by anybody. I work at ELCM and Radio Veritas, not ELBC, so I don't think they're going to invite me anytime soon to go help any ELBC people.
So I think Mr. Abalo, continue in that vein when you talked about the workshop we were trying to help those guys, and then technology
Yeah.
was just the
So someone reached out to us, Volcano and myself, and said that they were trying to stand up this TV station, and they wanted us to provide distant learning basics in journalism, because what the person has in place now, they're all citizen journalists who are copying what they see on social media. That's how they're learning. Uh, Back home, the society back home, the type of journalism is pretty much copying one another over and over. There's no new style. Nobody wants to, generate a new style, and they want to copy and copy. And even if it's wrong, they're still copying that. So we kind of undertook that process over the weekend, and we had a good flow going, and then there was some technical glitches. Volcano is going to be traveling home, and he's looking at actually holding that workshop for the young people there, and we were kind of laying the basis on what they're getting into. It is a glamorous profession on the surface. Everybody want their byline on a story, or they want to be in front of the camera. Not everybody is cut out to be a journalist, and that's how journalism has become perverted in the Liberian situation, because mediocre people with no training, with no background, with no good judgment have infiltrated the profession, and we have all of these problems happening. One of the things I wanted to mention real quickly was what Alfonso mentioned about, having these professionals like attorneys and lawyers and different professional data scientists and professionals having media shows where we question reporting from every media. I mean, look at this story. What was the intent of this story? Look at how the lead was written and things like that. We had a show like that at ELBC when I was there. Francis Duana, was the host on that show. I don't know if it continued after I left, but those are the kinds of shows I like to watch, where the media holds itself accountable by bringing other media people in, by bringing in professionals who read the stories and we ask, what did you think of this story? So I think that's very important. That's one way we can solve some of the problems back home, by being introspective and looking inward, having people actually be critical of what we wrote so that we can learn from that.
Wow.
So
And I just want to to commend you, Mr. Abalo. You still have the voice. I missed hearing your voice reading the news. Creative View. You remember Creative View? When you left, I turned it into Arts in Vision. So man, listen, we can't we're missing out. We're missing out. We're missing out on a whole lot. Hearing you again would be so intriguing for me. I mean, you have one of the finest voices on radio, especially when you were newscasting. But I just wanted to commend you. You still have it. Yeah, gentlemen.
yeah,
Thank you.
so I just wanted to ask Mr. Abalo. I know we have said a lot, and I think we have maybe a little over a month to the election in Liberia. Uh, how can we turn this around for the media in order to make it more credible? And since this election is very critical, what would be your advice to
That's
our
a very good
colleagues?
question.
So we are less than 50 days away from the national elections, and we have the media in full swing. Traditional media, social media, new media, citizen journalists, and the question is, how do we turn this around to make reporting more credible, right? So my thinking towards this will be a little radical. Veteran journalists in Liberia or here, I don't know if we have the time to coalesce around an initiative where every weekend, even if it's something like this, a Zoom call or whatever, where we get together and start to discuss the issues surrounding the media and what type of challenges reporters are facing on the field. That would be something that would be helpful. It's an initiative just for between now and the election, and then after that, we do a postmortem, see what progress we got out of that, and then we go on to something else. I would propose that we consider doing that, invite other people in, and get people from back home who can tell us what type of challenges they're having, and actually call people out, especially when it comes to the platform and what is happening, what is not happening. Obviously, you're going to have detractors who are going to say, "Oh, that man against the government, that man against the this our candidate and all of that." That's going to happen. What are you going to do? You can't spend too much time thinking about that. But that would be one way that we can address that. As it stands now, I don't think the media even has time to breathe. There's so much happening. And I don't know how you then tell the media to take 5 minutes to breathe and to recalibrate on reporting. They're set in their ways. Whatever is happening out there is what is happening out there. Traditional media, radio, television, the actual television, the terrestrial television. I don't have a lot of access to. I don't listen to a lot of radio from back home, but the little that I've listened to, there's a lot that is that needs to be improved. But again, my thing is, let's have veterans, let's have people who are media saturated begin to have these discussions as an initiative for between now and the elections and the post-mortem, and see what kind of progress, because we could have discussed it maybe a year ago and we wouldn't be where we are now.
So let me quickly add. I was speaking with a brother who worked at LBS, former director general. There was several, so I'm not going to say specifically who. And I asked him, and he said to me, "Listen, Volcano, we came here with a mind to get our journalists trained. We wanted to stand out. Somebody picking ain't ready for the radio, but the representative, the legislators, they go to them and cross it. We're holding them down, so they force us to put them on the radio because ourselves won't have jobs. So it's not like your time, Emmanuel, the Patrick Manager, the late, the Steve Makundu, the Martin Brown, who said Volcano is not ready, he's not ready. He got to demonstrate. He got Moses Sandy is not ready, he's not ready. And to stand the ground until we demonstrated that we were ready. It's not happening. So there's a lot of influence, undercut influence coming from the powers that be, that pushing the people who are in these positions of authority, who should really be able to say, yes, this reporter is ready. This person is ready now to read just the news summary. They make it even read news summary, but he want to read a whole news half hour. So he's struggling. He made the news half hour, the news hour, because the news half hour will be 30 minutes.
Yeah, and make it taking 1 hour to do it.
The news hour. So that's what I was told by a director general. He said, we want to do our best. Many of these people are not ready. But how do we get them when we are being pressured by the representatives, by the people who send them here? Because most of these guys coming to these institutions to work, they're just sent there. Partisans, they blood the payroll, they send all these people there, and they're not ready, because if somebody has a Volcano TV and running around with his cell phone, they say you got job, you did a good job with it, with the other publicity, you got jobs in the send a man to ERBC. The man got an ERBC, he passed around a few times, said, well, why I can't hear my man? I need to hear my man on the air. And the man not ready for the air. But I just wanted to point this out, that these things are really happening in actuality. And so as a result, where do we get these people? Like you said, the media doesn't have the opportunity to breathe. And the real people who want to make sure that these people are ready, look, listen, I always say thank God for your time, and thank God for the time we came in the media. Because if we had come in the media in this dispensation, it's zero. Absolute zero, and spelled with capital letters. Zero. And I'm grateful for people like you, for the days that I came to LBS, and I'm sure many of us who came from the old school of broadcasting, the old school of journalism, can take pride in what we did. And we still want to impart, we still want to share what we know. But again, the people are not willing to be embracing of this opportunity. It's all about the man come to take my job, or who he think he is because he come from America, so he think he know it all. And these are the things we hear. And at the end of the day, I don't want to really work for LBS anymore. LBS can pay me for what I'm valued now. You understand me? Many of no media institution can pay me
I
for
want to volunteer, do whatever, but they can't now.
Yeah. So I just thought through this thing, gentlemen.
Yeah, I wanted to mention and also recognize the work of Alphonso prior to now. As an integrity institution working with the church way back then, The,
JPC.
yeah, the kind of information that they were coming out with, that information needed to get out to the public. And that was where the media had a role to play. And in some newsrooms, what Alfonso and the JPC were doing, that was too controversial to air. Okay, too controversial. So if you have institutions like the JPC and others, Moses, the question you're asking, if those institutions have statements that impact or that will kind of lend to the kind of election that we want, media institutions should be seeking out these individuals. Individuals, they should promote uh, a forum where people who are participating in the elections, candidates or their supporters or people who have these views, can come to a forum and discuss. The media can provide that forum. Okay. And then, even with the little that we have back home, please be transparent, be responsible in reporting that, be accountable in reporting. That's the least you can do at this time. We're not saying change the world, change, Liberia. We're saying with all of the challenges you have, if you have an opportunity to report, be transparent, be accountable. I just wanted to mention that.
Just read that for yourself. Manasumo says, you got to read it. The man said he won't hear your voice, so read it. Oh, you muted
The
yourself.
man muted. Yeah.
You muted yourself on mute. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Somo, you're very kind. Tomorrow is your birthday. Hearing Emmanuel Abalo is the best birthday gift I've received, and I miss that voice. Can Emmanuel give us a 1-minute jingle of the news headlines? I missed that voice.
All right. So
That's
there
the
you
news
go.
headline.
The man already ready. That's the news headline.
The man already give you the jingles, man.
Oh,
I think real quickly, one thing that
Yeah, happy birthday, sir.
media houses and journalists in Liberia, I think part of the problem we have is everyone wants to break the news right away. So when you read some of the newspapers, the English is all over the place. It hasn't been edited. Even some of the leading newspapers. When we're in journalism school, Rufus Dapo and all of those people, they will go to these newspapers in the evening when they left the University of Liberia and be editors to
Yeah.
read the stories. English teachers will go to these newspapers and read the stories before they're ever published. Nowadays, even our leading newspapers, you pick up the paper and you confused what exactly they're trying to say.
You know,
Everyone,
yeah, guys, I want to share 3 things with you that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
made me who I am when I
yeah.
was an active journalist in Liberia. I want to share 3 stories with you. The first, I had just gotten hired at ELCM. The first story I covered was the election in 1985. We went to the barracks and we saw soldiers standing around ballot boxes and stuffing ballot boxes.
Wow.
I mean, what country do you see that happening? We knew that was going to be a problem. And General Taylor or Colonel Taylor or whoever, this notorious,
Yeah, Tilly, yeah.
he was there when this was happening, and we recorded him saying if then President Doe didn't win that election, he will overthrow the government in 3 days. We recorded that. We brought it back to the station. We aired that audio. We asked Bishop. Bishop said, air it. We aired the audio and we then erased the tape. That was one. And the problem is, how do you go home? We kept looking out the window to see because people heard it.
Yeah.
What if people were going to come by the radio station and, that would be the end of us. In any case, nobody came by. And to go home, I mean, you got to go and take taxi to go home. You will be picked up between there. I would say that the only thing that's kept some of us alive in that country was for Archbishop Michael Francis. Peace be to his soul, his grace, the Archbishop. That was our protection. There were things I heard from the mansion. There was a guy who used to come to the Catholic Church, and he was a butler in the mansion to do. And this guy would come and he would tell us, say, that story you carried, the chief was mad or whatever. That was one. The second thing that actually was very profound on me, there was a gentleman, I remember his name was Cholople. He came to the country during the Dole time. I don't know what happened. This gentleman was picked up at RI. He never made it in town. He was picked up at RIA and flown to Belayala.
Oh, wow.
Nobody knew. The family didn't know. And somehow this guy, he got out of Belayala. He came to the office there, to the bishop's office, and he told the bishop what happened. Bishop sent him over to the station. We did an interview with him, and we aired that interview. I mean, these are the kinds of things we're putting on the radio. And we're talking about going home to Logan Town, a slum community, where you can encounter anybody on the road and who knows where you work. You know, in any case, Bishop was able to help this gentleman get out of the country through the U.S. Embassy. That was very profound. But the fact that we talked to this guy and he told us what he went through at Belayala, it was very profound. And I said to myself, you mean I'm going to let the world know this is what happened to this person? You know, I couldn't do that without Bishop's, blessings, because that would be the end of some of us. And the third thing was the octopus raid in Monrovia, and at ELBC, we were at the FM station at the Ducor, because when the Taylor rebels attacked the Bushwood Island, they overran all of that area where we were broadcasting from, the Free Zone Authority area near LEC. So we went up to the Ducor and we were there. So we were watching the rebels attack Bushwood Island from Ducor. We could see the fighting. And they were waiting to march into Monrovia. The AFL has sealed the gate at the Barclay Training Center. Nobody could enter and nobody could leave. They were taking the last stand. Elkoborg was pretty much overrun by the rebels. But what they couldn't understand, the rebels in Banga, what they couldn't understand was they were getting reports from the front line. They were all the way in Bushwood Island. It was just a matter of marching into Monrovia. You could see the people coming into Monrovia on the new bridge. The AFL was waiting to engage these rebels, but ELBC FM was on the air. So what the rebel commanders in Banga couldn't understand was, if they're telling us that they're taking over Monrovia, why are these people still on the air? Why are they still on the air? Something's not right. We made a conscious decision to stay on the air and maintain psychological warfare. The reporting that we turned to, it was necessary, I don't have any regrets, was to start reporting that the rebels who were attacking the city had started losing. They were dying in the swamps. Some of them had run away. And that demoralized the commanders who were waiting to march into Monrovia. Taylor and the rest of them, they were all waiting to march into Monrovia. But because we stayed on the air, Octopus failed. Octopus failed. Monrovia did not fall. I don't care what anybody said. Monrovia did not fall. These guys did not cross the bridge into the downtown Monrovia because of what we did, being on the air with, Mr. Wallow. He was, our head at the time, and some others there. It was a strategic decision we made to keep the radio station on the air. Had we gone off the air, people were listening to us. We were the only line of communication telling them what was happening, and Monrovia would have fallen. But that was a strategic decision to stay on the air and broadcast and carry positive news and turn that around. So those are the three profound things that kind of shaped me when it came to being a fearless journalist. I always tell people, be fearless, be accountable, but don't be stupid. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
And the point you made here, I think is very, very important to also add the risk, because Ducor Hotel is an icon. It's sitting up there. Those guys could launch it, but probably they didn't even know the location of the radio station. So you know, but that's the rigs. But
It
we've
was
gone
a
so
blessing.
far. We will come back to this conversation. I hope you will avail yourself again, because as we trend again toward our elections, we need to talk more. So we want to do memory lane, and then we'll initiate you to what type of country is this, as I said. So let's go through this, because we're going almost 9:15 here. If you just joined us, we say welcome to the Issues Room. This is our 178th broadcast, and we'd like to encourage you. There's a lot of folks here tonight. Thanks so much for joining us here. We hope that you are continuing to share the link. Memory lane by Dr. Manin Sumo. It says, from the Issues Room, what type of country is this? So he decided to promote that segment. And so from my memoir, I sing thee a song. Let's go memory lane. You'll remember, I will build thee a great nation, but we say no to that, and instead, in the cause of the people, the struggle continues. It is true that Liberia is Africa's oldest republic, but what can we show for it? What type of country is this? The Congo boys then built a wall and kept the country boys them on the other side for over 100 years. What type of country is this? In 1980, the country boys them got vexed and tired with one-party rule, so they broke the wall down and put Dor in power. He said Dor, D-O-R. In 1989, the Congo boys then changed color and used the same country boys to take Dor down. But they broke all the windows, light poles, killed innocent women and children, and even dug up the coal tar. What type of country is this? Y'all know Liberia has 16 indigenous ethnic tribes, with the Kwele tribe being the largest. The Kwele make up over a quarter of the Liberian population. Though being the largest tribe, the Kwele are peaceful people. Yeah, the Liberian people call them stupid. Thus, being peaceful in Liberia means being stupid. So what type of country is this? That if you are peaceful, you are stupid. When the settlers, the Vai, the Mandingo, the Loma, the Kwele, and all the western tribes first arrived in our modern day Liberia, the Gola tribe was there. The Golas gave them land to settle on, not for sale. Years later, these same tribes connived with the settlers and forcibly seized the Gola land. So the Golas took precautionary steps to defend their remaining lands. The Golas became to consider themselves as strangers on their own land as the way to prevent taking the land. Because of this, the Liberian people say the Gola people are mean. And you know they say Gola people mean. What type of country is this? But as we go to elections in October, let us vote for people who knows where they come from. Vote for those who knows their tradition, culture, and history. If you don't know where you come from, you will not know where you are going. Let's vote wise. As we go to vote this October, listen to our candidates. Liberia is home to some of the world's most endangered animals, such as the Diana monkey, guinea pig, or guinea red colobus, chimpanzee, and the pygmy hippopotamus. And all of these animals, when preserved, can bring millions of dollars to Liberia through the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs, and Tourism. Liberia is home to over 700 species of birds, including what we in Liberia call the pepper bird. A pepper bird is a national symbol of Liberia. It is the symbol for the rank of the first and second lieutenants in the Liberian army. Tourists paid millions of dollars yearly to see these birds. Food-wise, the Sapo National Park is a hub for monkeys making in Liberia. What do you hear the candidates say about these historic and income-based institutions? Liberia has over 7 million hectares of tropical forest that needs no fertilizer to grow food, yet we die from hunger in the mass. What do you hear the candidates say about these things? So vote wise, vote your future, vote Liberia, a coming peace. A piece here written by Dr. Manin Sumo, a contributor here with the little segment we call Memory Lane. Mr. Abalo, you are a prolific, poetic writer. So, what do you make of that?
I think that was quite interesting and quite prolific. Some of the information that he mentioned regarding Gola land is on point because in one of my books on the evolution of the Liberian military and how the frontier force came into being and the spread of the settlers into Gola land and all of that. This is exactly something I quoted in my book. So I was very pleased to hear him mention that. So yeah, I hope you'll keep him, coming back with more of these. It's very
Yeah,
historical.
he's been doing that a lot, and
Yeah.
is an attraction for the show, in consonant with what we do here. Title, what type of country is this? And that's the segment now we want to bring in because it's
Quick. The only thing is, he didn't say what steps the Gola people took that made us to call them mean people. What did they do? What did they? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Unofficially, I'll tell you that.
all right. Go ahead, make your point quick before
Yeah,
we.
unofficially, I will tell you that from my research when I wrote the book, there were a couple of Gola kings who were very, very, very dishonest. They did business with the settlers. They lied to the settlers. I mean, they were just two timing, getting stuff for themselves, dealing with this person and all of that. But again, they say that history is written by the victor. So I don't know.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Okay. What type of country is this? Let's move this off the screen. Come on, guy. You're being a crazy dude tonight. What type of country is this? That we're heading toward elections and our journalists don't even know what to do. We're having this conversation, what we call the dire minute, right? What type of country is this? Let me open the mic for Moses because Mr. Abalo, this time the OP, this is an OP floor. OP,
Yes.
So
what
what
type
type of country did the journalist not even know the town that he went to interview
yeah,
people?
about her? What type of country is this?
What type of country is this?
Moses.
Yeah. What type of country is this when election is less than 2 months and you have the citizens from one of the countries jeering at the current president?
You
What
keep
type of
using the
country
word
is this?
Jerry. You
He
know,
said
Jerry can be
Jerry, my
Jeering
positive.
is booing.
yeah, boo.
Yeah, it's
No,
booing.
but
Yeah.
Jerry can also be positive to jeer the crowd. And
And
go,
no, it's
you sure?
negative. It's
You sure,
negative.
my
Yeah.
man?
When you,
Okay,
my
me,
man,
my own
you
my
talking
man.
about
When I
when we are journalists, yeah.
say
When
about
you
no,
jeer,
I can still
you
learn about.
boo. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I can still learn. Let's
Go
go ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. Mr.
Mr.
Abalo.
Balalo.
You
You're
want to
right.
share?
You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
You're very right. So that's
Yeah.
good. That's good, Jerry. I thought it could be positive to the Jerry crowd.
No, and when you J is
Yeah,
negative.
it's
Yeah.
negative. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just corrected that.
Yeah.
What type of country is this that the president walking in the ring just for re-election? I haven't seen that. No one ever man said, you see the way I went, a part of your
Look, what type of country is it when the Minister of Finance comes and say Liberia is now supplying electricity to Ivory Coast, and the guy who headed the Millennium What project,
uh-huh,
Money Captain.
uh-huh.
Money Captain took to the airway today to say, no, Mr. Mr. Tue, you are in error.
But Money Captain is currently the head of LEC from
He's
what I
LEC. He's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
LEC
you know.
manager.
So he said no. The minister was in error, but it just tells you the level of desperation.
Moses, did he
Yeah.
actually say that?
Oh
yeah,
yeah, he had a news conference.
yeah,
He
he
said
said
the
Minister
minister is
supplying
In
the
fact, not a news conference, but rather he spoke on ERBC radio. He said the minister of finance was in the wrong. Yeah, and even Mr.
Flomo Livingstone, hashtag. What type of country is this? The Liberians don't have electricity but supply Ivory Coast with
Wait, let me say
what type of country is this? When
What?
John Smith, what country is this? When the veteran journalist Moses Sandy is an undercover supporter of the Octogenarian candidate.
All right, boy.
What type of country is this, minus Kumo? When
Simona Balo.
the journalist say, "Oh, no, let me go back to ask for the town's name."
I
LEC.
need copy.
The man need a copy to go. Is
I
that
see
battle
that
what you
there.
got?
They say, where you got his story from? He said, I need copy to go.
The journalist can say we
I,
are here.
I can't even cope with what you guys are coming with. But this is hilarious. This is hilarious, but real, right? So yeah, there's this
You
period
gotta
of
find
levity.
one. You gotta find one. You gotta
Yeah.
find
Uh,
Give
Let
us
the man tell him
give us
thinking
one.
about it. Moses on fire. Let Moses go.
No, I said, let me give us one.
I can't even think of
But
one.
what type of country is this? What type of country is this? Is Abalo? What type of country is this? The people say they got fiber optic internet. And then two veterans decide to help some people, young people, with training, and then the fiber optic internet. That we all gonna think. What type of
It
country?
kept spinning.
It's just spinning. Until the workshop started so nice, everything
Yeah.
set, and all of a sudden everything just zero.
Everything was
What type of country is this? But they got fiber optic. They
Yeah.
dump the ocean from
Yeah.
where they got the place from Cape Mount all the way to Maryland. They say they put fiber optic in the country. Internet with high
And,
speed.
and what type of country? What you see for Canada is what type of country is the what? Universities are offering e-learning courses, but the internet not stable.
No internet. They say, the University of Liberia say they got online classes. Somebody
Yeah.
told me be happy with it. Like, hold on.
I can think of this one.
Yeah,
I can
you
think
Yeah.
were
of
coming, you were
one.
coming quick. Hold on,
Yeah.
quick. Somebody
Yeah.
told me be happy with data. I want to do my online class. I said, so you won't be on Facebook. You got that he's talking there, he making sense. Go
I
ahead.
want to do my online course.
So the one, what type of country is this when a company with no investigation sets up an account with the Orange and Lone Star and sets up an AI
Yeah.
account where people deposit money and the company can go out of business and nobody asks to
And
find out.
nobody and other people become loser. Yeah, that was a very big story last week in Monrovia.
And
Yeah.
no redress.
No
Oh,
redress, my man.
let's get some coming in quickly. What type of country is this, Gabriel in Daniels? When the president can yell at the people of Bombing County and tell them to go ahead and boo
Yeah,
him,
boy.
or he needs their votes. What type of country is this? What type of country is this? Gwen John Smith come back and say,
Yeah.
when Cummings changed the way politicians do business, now everyone walking under the ring to campaign. What
Oh
type
my
of country is this? What type of country is this, Raymond Clark? Let me throw this in. That 13 years may integrate, says Mr. David Swart. I'm not understanding what he's trying to say.
He
Say
said
my
13 years, man, integrate.
uh-huh.
Okay,
So
Mr.
David
Davis.
Swag.
okay. I think he's making.
Mr. Davis, who I said
When
13.
Mr. David Suarez said, when he appeared on it in
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Israel, yeah, he
yeah,
said
yeah. The
he
guy was
was 13 when he was in the third grade.
yeah, but still, Mr. Swag ended up having a master's degree. So
Oh
he's
yeah,
just trying to illustrate here that at the age of 13, yeah, he
he
was
was in the
in third,
third grade. Yeah,
but he ended up having a master's in a
yeah,
very, very sound,
Good.
yeah.
sound
Very
guy.
Yeah,
sound
good
guy.
job.
Yeah,
Good
Yeah,
job.
very,
yeah.
very sound brother.
Hmm.
Mm.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
go to what type of country is this? Oh, okay, so let's go back to Thomas. To Raymond Clark. Raymond Clark is seen as a 13-year-old in this country. You shouldn't be in the third grade, so
No,
it's a
No,
problem. I think that's what
no,
he means. That's what he means.
no, but yeah, but
That's what he
he
means.
was.
What type of country that a 13-year-old will be in third grade? And
I
that's not
know
happening. That's all.
the American standard.
Yeah.
But back when you see the youth,
Yeah,
all the political parties, the youth, then look at them.
Say,
the man's 55. What say you?
what type of country is this? Emmanuel Jackson, no functional electricity, internet service, clean drinking water, no waste management system, yet claims it is rich in natural or
Yeah.
mineral resources that are exported to foreign lands. 600,000 tons of gold exported to Turkey, and this
Wow.
currency has no value in the international money market. What type of country is
Country
this?
is
Thomas
it?
Owaji, what type of country is this where the well loved president is being booed and heckled wherever he goes lately? What type of country is this? Flobo Livingstone hashtag that the president has to truck in his supporters
Oh
where he
yeah.
goes. What type of country is this?
I saw the
What country
president
is this?
thanking.
Gabriel Daniels, come back. When a senator can walk on blocks to go and campaign in his district, where the district is a slump area. So what
Yeah.
he's saying here is that you walking on block, you put no road, you put no bridge. Now the rainy season
The
take
man
over
is
the
talking
place.
about Akawa's grade.
I want to see. And then you jumping over a block after making all that noise. And a car's been in our house for almost what 16 years or so.
16 years, yeah.
What type of
Mm-hmm.
country is this?
The country is, yeah. Man.
What type of country is this? On the brink of the campaign, the president calls media heads and
Yeah.
gives them brown envelopes and
Get
the
us
story
take
change.
yeah, everything. Everybody keep away. We as re-election. Sister G finna talking about man.
Sister G is just a drop in the bucket, though.
Mm.
Drop in the bucket in real money. Drop in the
Yeah.
bucket.
Everybody carry
I can
promotional
imagine.
headline.
I can imagine how to fought over it.
Oh yeah, if I'm told that it wasn't either the battle for that sister G to develop money. People literally fought one another.
So what type of country is this Flomo Livingstone hashtag that the city mayor isn't cleaning the city but walking around with expensive shoes and clothes? What type of country is this?
Yeah.
Manesumo, when the political leaders can only feed their voters once is election year.
Yes.
What
What
type
type
of
of
country
country
is
is this?
this?
Hmm?
When John Smith, every one of them talking about we are first round, shameless and wicked people. What type of
What
country
type
is
of
this?
country is this? What type of country is it? Your presidential or your incumbent president visits you only when he needs re-election?
Oh, but let me ask, what type of country is this? The president can only talk when it's time for election season. Now don't mind that. Don't mind that. I get YFE. I get free education. I get more road, more hospital. Now he can talk. But when
Yeah.
it comes to talking to the people on critical matters, he doesn't say anything. So he
Uh,
really got plenty of talking to do until October 10. What type of
yeah.
country is this?
Mhm.
That the president leads the country for 5 years and probably what 10 months
Yeah.
and now become vocal. Type of
What type of country is this? Yeah.
also, come on, my man.
You know, Moses is surprising me tonight. Look like he tired. Moses is
No,
usually
I'm
on
not.
fire.
I'm not tired. You already know my situation.
We
You
know
know.
your situation. We know,
Yeah.
but you still got a jail, my brother.
Yeah. And what type of country is this? What type of country is this when election is coming? Then a group of senatorial hopefuls, get together and say, "Hey, don't vote Natana McGill because he's a criminal.
Oh,
We don't want no criminal in our country."
those men are also in the race.
They all got together. Seven senatorial hopeful got together. They said,
For
"We don't
Maggie,
want it Natana McGill, man." No, you look about us and she let anybody from here. Don't vote for Natana McGill. He's a
They're like one of us, but not my girl.
yeah, McGill is a criminal.
And he's not from this county.
Uh,
Mr. Bali got to come up, man. Come on, come on.
So, what type of country is this? The non grass, I'm gonna be man from our community and slam it in there. That's all.
Yeah, what type of country is it when the ULA president, when the ULA former president is in jail for raping?
Oh God.
Bali out, man.
The man's in jail for statutory raping.
So even the negatives don't stay in Liberia. It transcends even across borders. What type of country is this? What type of country is this, Moses? We understand your situation, but we're missing that hat. You gotta put a hat on.
I
What
know.
type of country is this, Thomas and Waji? Where schools are still being built with Colombo blocks for windows and lights. What type of country is this? In this morning age.
And the people are still using death flow.
But he said give me free education.
Yeah, go to school.
Free
All right, guys.
education on YFE.
All right, guys, I got to step away now.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a
Yeah, I want to
pleasure.
thank you guys. Yeah,
Yeah,
anything
thank you.
regarding the media, we'll be happy to hop on and discuss.
Sure.
But again, thanks to Volcano and Moses and Alphonso. I also want to commend your commitment to holding the leaders accountable by raising those issues that you see through your press releases. That's part of doing your journalistic
Thank you.
duty. Don't shy away. That's how we hold them accountable. That's how we make a difference. And believe it or not, those things have impact. We have a voice. We have a platform. Let's use it to help our people. Let's be their voices. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Abalo.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure having you.
We appreciate you, and we hope that we'll reach out again to have these conversation because the process continues until October 10th. And this is about really setting our media, the fourth estate straight, because we think their contribution is impactful when it comes to the credibility and outcome of our elections. So thank you. We'll reach out again.
Very well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
What type of country is this? Our man Emmanuel Jackson said the head of LEC, Captain, said he has $300 million secured to build a hydro in Bone County at a cost of $500 million. But a $200 million balance we will be retrieved, rather, only at the re-election of President Weah in his second term. Oh, so they got 300 million.
Yeah.
But Weah is secure. Then we'll get the other 200. You see.
Yeah, if we is really like that.
He imagine Captain and
So
said,
when did he say that?
that was my old man saying, how many Zili? What type of country is this? When the VP said on ERBC that the government has lifted millions out of poverty, including wheelbarrow boys, food sellers.
With a market sellers.
So they're not in poverty anymore.
What type of country is this, Gabriel and Daniels? When the president can recall the senators back to Monrovia that went to campaign in their counties because he's getting information that they are campaigning against him. What type of country is this?
Wow.
Wow, what a controlling president, my man.
Flomo Livingston, what type of country is this that the trash in red lights is taking over the road?
Yeah.
Wow.
Shaggy McAfee, hashtag, what type of country is this that have enough power that we are supplying Africans, but yet the mansion and ERBs is still running on generators.
What type of country is it?
That boy can lie, that boy can lie,
What
that
type
boy
of
can
country
lie.
is it
Oh
that
my.
the elections commission we supply electricity to Africa, but the
Okay, so
election commission has no
he
like
says the source here is it was reviewed on the Costa show.
wow.
Emmanuel Jackson regarding the millions and the re-elections of President Weah to
Okay.
get the other 200 million if he
Wow.
gets re-elected. That's the guarantee.
Oh come
So
on.
So
it's a sort of
where was
campaign by
the
the
200
Yeah,
LEC.
million?
it's a form of campaigning by
It
Captain,
is
By the
from,
LEC.
Yeah, just
So he's
for
but
speaking
where,
for LEC.
yeah.
but where the 200 million coming from now?
Yeah.
When he get re-elected.
So
And
where's the
and we will
assurance?
make
Where's
it
the
available, or
assurance that that
somebody
money will
will give
ever
it.
come?
So maybe he will go borrow money.
Yeah. Where's Body Allen? You know.
But
Yeah.
gentlemen, I thought it was a great show. Let's wrap it up here tonight. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, guys, for the opportunity to hang out again. I think Mr. Abalo heads on was great for the contribution here. Media practices, the role of the media. As we glide toward October 10th, it is our hope we'll have these kinds of conversations because they're so intriguing. And let's say happy birthday to our man, Dr. Mani Sumo. He says his birthday is
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah. So what going on, Archie?
Yeah, my man, you gotta let us know now. You got Moses'
You
number,
coming?
tell Moses so
You,
you can
you
tell us.
coming?
No,
You
so we
coming?
can start flying. Oh.
Where
Oh,
yeah? You
oh, the
going
man
back?
moved to Minnesota, eh?
You
Yeah,
going back or you yeah?
anyway, he will
The
get to
man were
us.
yeah. Hold on, the man were yeah the other day. You stay here, Chi? We're meeting to our basement.
You talking to the man. Man, you gotta answer. The man
And
asked
then
me
money
question.
got to answer if he eat GP, let us know so we can drive there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
well,
so
man,
Shaggy says, what type of country is this? That all you can say sometimes is damn. What type of country is this? That's
Absolutely.
all you can get. He said
Um,
the man say, yeah, he's in Delaware, he leaving Sunday.
oh,
but
okay.
but let me to that
Oh,
play
yeah,
now.
but let us know
Behind
now
it,
so we can come
behind that play
celebrate
tomorrow, I
tomorrow.
will
We
play.
drive there. Man, send us the address where
They,
people.
no, but you gotta know the itinerary now.
But the man will say everything. When the man say your address, you include everything.
Yeah, I will
You
send it.
know,
But
whether we
quickly,
want to
let
work
me run,
close to you
gentlemen,
know.
let me run down the queue here. Manan Sumo, Edith McIntosh, Fergie Monu, Raymond Clark. Thank you, Shaggy McAfee for coming. Alphonso Tale, Thomas Awaji as usual, good brother. Thank you, Rivers S Pro. You pop in and you started with Joseph Boyga. This show tonight was not about an old politician. We're just talking about the role of the media. Flomo Livingston, thank you. Emmanuel Jackson, Agnes Finda Samukai, thank you for coming in tonight. We appreciate your viewership. V King Bridges Jr., it was good seeing you. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Gregory Himistan, also good to see you, my dear media colleague. Hamilton Zili, thanks for your perspectives here tonight. We appreciate your viewership. James Fasukwe, thank you. Thank you for coming. All of you who made it to the show tonight, Mohammed Krumar, all the way in London, England, or the UK. Sam Abu, of course, discussing here. He's disappeared for the last several shows. You gotta pay fine. Ellis Stevens, of course, G. Gwen Jones Smith, for jumping on our man Moses. Anyway, Fiflin, Mr. Fiflin, thank you. Isaac Sa, Nicholas Payne, thank you for joining us here tonight. It was good seeing you, my brother. Always good to see you, Gabriel and Daniels. Thank you for your contribution. Continue to share the word. Invite others to like us, follow us, and be a fan of the Issues Room so that you can get all of the information needed when we come on, especially the notification. Thank you, guys. Moses, Alfonso, good night. Let's call it a night.
Yeah, yeah.
Good night,
After
brother.
after the podcast, let's talk
Let's
briefly.
Okay, let's do that.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right.
Sure.
Good night, everyone. It was good seeing you all.